People have a poor education because it's much too narrow, and yet when one tries to broaden it, it's taught poorly. So I see that in students, and I see that certainly among faculty. In students, to some degree, bad teaching is a missed opportunity. It's less that it warps them than it just leaves them empty. But increasingly, it's warping them too.
Mark Blitz, you argue not just that we ought to be conserving liberty and conserving virtue, but also conserving excellence. And this section of your book is in a way your version or your response to cultural conservatism or traditional conservatism. You write about the importance of family and education and religion and these institutions that can inculcate excellence or a love of excellence in civil society. But the background of your concern is the sense of decline, which in a way permeates the book. Certainly it begins the book and you come back to it at many points. How do we know if America is living in an age of decline?
I think that one can understand one is living in an age of decline or an age of improvement only if one has standards by which to judge decline. And though the arguments that we are declining in art, music, thought are overblown, nonetheless, they're not simply untrue. And I think one needs to face that and see that that kind of difficulty is connected to the egalitarianism that you see in liberal democracies, both in a certain sense the egalitarianism of equal natural rights, but especially the egalitarianism which forgets equal natural rights. So that's one part of the issue, and one needs to deal with that issue. The second part of the issue is the very difficult question of our institutions. One develops character, one develops freedom, one develops virtue, one develops an understanding of excellence only within certain institutions, family, religion, for example. And these can't help but operate to some degree on the ground of authority. You have to take certain things for granted. Not everything can be equal immediately or from the beginning. And in a variety of ways, those institutions are weaker now than they used to be. And that's something I think conservatives are especially concerned about. On the other hand, you can't simply walk in and try to press those institutions on others at the same time that you're arguing that you're defending liberty. That's the difficulty.
Now, you write poignantly about higher education, the decline of the university in America. You've spent most of your life in the university. Describe the signs of decline that you see when you look at the contemporary professors, when you look at students. What do you see that concerns you?
Yeah, well, lots of things. First of all, there are too many courses teaching too many narrow things, therefore enabling students to graduate knowing very little but a certain narrow specialty. Most academics are narrow specialists. So the broad understanding of the most important things is not generally taught to students across the board. That's a first difficulty. Second difficulty, however, is that even when one does try to teach the fundamental texts, let's say, of moral and intellectual thought, the fundamental texts of literature, they're taught poorly. They're taught poorly because they're taught now on the ground of and on the basis of just those arguments starting from the 19th century on, which misinterpret the meaning of nature, the meaning of truth, and so on. So one is caught both ways. People have a poor education because it's much too narrow, and yet when one tries to broaden it, it's taught poorly. So I see that in students, and I see that certainly among faculty. In students, to some degree, bad teaching is a missed opportunity. It's less that it warps them than it just leaves them empty. But increasingly, it's warping them too, I would say. So these are real difficulties.
Warping them in what way?
Warping them in the sense that they don't understand the true grounds of their own political and ethical health. They don't understand what the meaning of natural rights. They don't understand what it is to truly search and look and seek. They don't understand the height of the intellectual life, and especially they don't understand the beautiful. Great art, great music, great literature, fading away. Fading away and warped because what replaces it is mediocre.
But what can conservatives or anyone else who is concerned with excellence do in the contemporary academy?
Well, you need islands of excellence, and that's one thing that conservatives have attempted to either create or sustain. Even within the better schools, there are always some students and some faculty with whom one can deal and whom one can support. One needs to have all sorts of special programs, summer programs, and so on, that attract students who at least can be attracted. One needs to look at also islands of excellence in surprising places, not always the schools with the best and the highest reputation. I think one needs to do all of those things generally. In one's own institution, if one teaches, one needs to protect what is high and emphasize a curriculum which is a sensible curriculum as much as one possibly can. And also in one's own institution, one needs to protect freedom of speech, which is always under threat. All of this, I think, helps, but it's not a full solution.
Let's come back to the connection we began with, or that I referred to in the very beginning. Why is it that this kind of excellence that you can find in higher education at its best, but in comparable ways in religion and religious devotion and instruction, why does liberal democracy need these? Why does conservatism need these?
For two reasons. One needs it for human happiness. The fullest human happiness is connected to the fullest use of one's powers and talents. The fullest use of one's powers and talents is connected to the full use of reason, either as such or in the way in which reason forms and directs the passions, let's say, in the greatest art. So that's one reason one needs it. What is the aim and direction of one's liberty and one's freedom? The second reason one needs it is so that one is exposed to and can think about the true grounds of what is high in our own country and the true grounds of our equality, namely equal natural rights. So one needs it politically, and in that sense, ultimately, in terms of one's virtue, but one needs it also, and most fundamentally, in terms of understanding what human happiness truly is and directing oneself to it.
A term which has fallen out of favor, but which you reprise in your discussion, is vulgarity. Now, one of the things that a government can't protect you entirely from vulgarity, but it used to do a lot more to restrict obscenity in the arts and in public spaces. Ought it to return to those kinds of efforts?
Well, those who are in charge of the arts and in charge of what you see, they ought to think hard about what they produce and what they do. So what one would much prefer is self-understanding of what is beautiful and what is high and what's truly entertaining, in the attempt to elevate one's audience and direct one's audience. It might be that government has some role and place there. The difficulty is that government, as presently constituted, once it gets in the business of censoring and directing, who knows what it will have as its aim in censoring and directing. So some of that might be okay, living up to the standards that one used to have, let's say, and what one can produce on television. But it's fundamentally a matter of self-understanding and education among those who are themselves in the arts. That's, I think, the fundamental thing.